do ya? I got to figure out some way, I'm not sure exactly how to do it, to make it where my glasses don't look like they're a reflection in the headlight there, but a discussion for another day, obviously. I'm already a little worn down today, I'll be honest with you. We've been going through the trials and tribulations of trying to track what is now, it is a hurricane. I wanted to say what is a tropical storm, but it's not. It is a hurricane now. And it's a hurricane earlier than probably what a lot of us would have thought, right? That we were thinking maybe noon tomorrow you would see, it become a hurricane. And now here it is. Already it's only 10 a.m. and it is a Category 1 storm. By the way, good morning, everybody. I'm Dan Gresham. This is the At Home Update. We've been doing this for months now. This, of course, kind of a little bit different. We started it with the pandemic going on, the fact that a lot of folks were working from home, and we thought, well, we'll work from home too. We'll also continue to update things. But the approach, much more casual here on the Facebook live stream. This is not a newscast. I don't have a director. I don't have a producer. It's just me. And I can, show you that that's it. That's us. That's everything that's going on this morning. Me, a camera, and more importantly, you. And we have a lot of information to get to this morning. We want to talk about how the situation has changed, what we're looking at currently, and where we may be going over the course of the next 48 hours. I've spent an incredible amount of time in the last 24 hours on the phone. And I'm not a good phone person. I'm not a person who spends a lot of time. I'm not one of those people that 10 minutes and I'm ready to move on. I know we can talk. I'd rather talk face to face than I had talk on the phone. But I say that because it's obvious that a lot of people have questions. Let's try to answer some of those this morning. I'm not saying we can get to all of them, but let's try to answer as many as we possibly can. And I'm going to point you back to KFDM television, KFDM.com, and of course the Facebook page, not to mention KBTV, which is Fox 4. We will be continually updating the information. Meteorologists are in the weather center now 24/7 from this point forward. In fact, most all of us on staff will be there almost nonstop from this point forward. So where are we at this morning? Let's take a look at KFDM.com. I think that might help explain some of the situation that we're talking about this morning. First things first, the latest category track. This is 7 a.m. Actually, I believe it's 11 a.m. They issue another track. The question becomes, where is this storm going, right? County judges have already made decisions. Orange County made the decision. Jefferson County judge made the decision. The mayor of Port Arthur out in front early saying we're going to issue mandatory evacuations. First part of the question that I constantly get is, what is a mandatory evacuation? Well, there are two types of evacuation. There is, of course, voluntary evacuation, and there is mandatory evacuation. The difference being that there are state laws aimed at securing people's safety in the time of natural disaster. That is when you have a mandatory evacuation. A lot of people think, well, do I have to go? I'm forced to go? I have never, in all my years, 40 years of covering tropical storms and hurricanes, I've never seen anyone forcefully removed from their home. This is more about a way for officials to really impress upon you the urgency of leaving, that they think this is going to be a serious problem. To wit, they suggest that, in fact, it's an order. They would like to be, but they're not going to go door to door, and they're not going to force you out of your home. That's not going to happen. Now, could you be penalized if they wanted to? Yes. As my understanding, there are fines in the state of Texas if you fail to leave during a mandatory order. There are other things that come into effect while they put mandatory evacuations in place, or at least my understanding. It also has to do with employment, that you can get out without having to fear of losing your job. At least that's the way I understand it. Or that you can't be compelled to come to work, because there is a mandatory evacuation. But they have to make these things far enough in advance for them to be effective. If they wait until tomorrow at noon and say, we're going to have a mandatory evacuation, then you got a problem. Many of you will remember 2005 with Rita's evacuation, just what a mess that turned to. Everything from I-45 to 69 to 105. We're talking about hours of sitting in traffic in order to evacuate. Don't foresee that happening this time because you don't have Houston involved in the evacuation. And that was a big part of the problem back in 2005. You had people from Houston trying to get out on I-45, trying to get out on I-10, and everything's jam-packed. Well, now, for the most part this morning, you're simply talking about the extreme southeast Texas counties. That may change because the track of the storm could change. But at this point, that's where we're at. So you have mandatory evacuation orders, Orange County, Jefferson County. You do not have them at this point. At least I have not seen it for Chambers County, Hardin, the others. And if as that changes, obviously we will tell you. Also, Galveston, the city of Galveston, has made the decision for a mandatory evacuation. They're going to start shutting down city services at noon. Meanwhile, County of Galveston has they've not been interested in issuing, to this point, a mandatory. They have a volunteer. But we all know 87, with any kind of storm surge, is underwater. And I'm sure that's a major concern to them. And it's all about intensity. It's all about what intensity will this storm be when it makes landfall. Let's go back over to KFDM.com. This is the latest track map. This is from the National Hurricane Service. I have to think about it. There's the 10 a.m. update. So they have updated it at 10 a.m. Latest advisory has shifted the track ever so slightly west. Still expected to be a Category 3 at landfall. Current path, wind gust to 130 will be possible across the Golden Triangle. Storm surge will be an issue. This is not going to be a 60-inch rain event. This is going to be a windstorm and a storm surge storm. They're talking about 9 feet above ground level with some of these storm surges. Here's the thing. The further it goes west, the more we're on the dirty side of the storm. You were wishing that it would go east. Now, if you want to wish a direction, you would want extreme west. Because where it's at right now, it's not a good place for southeast Texas. We're talking, again, wind gusts to 130 miles an hour. 130 miles an hour. That's something to think about. And again, storm surge maps are out there as well if you want to see those. Let me just show you. This is another interesting when you say, well, meteorologists are pretty good and have been pretty good about the idea of direction. Intensity, a lot of times they struggle with. They really do. They struggle with intensity because there are a lot of factors coming into play. Unfortunately, for this storm, all the makings are there for this to really gin up and to be a strong, strong storm. Because first of all, it's got time. It's already, a Category 1. And if you go back and I'm going to remove myself here so that you can kind of focus on. But if you look at where it's at now, just off of Cuba, it's a 1. Look how much space there is between Cuba and Texas for it to really rev up. The water is extremely hot in the Gulf. And these are heat engines. They are driven by that hot water. And there is nothing really to shear it off. Marco turned out to be a non-event. This is not going to be a non-event. I don't know if I can put this in motion so you can see what happened. Well, I guess after the ad, I could put it into motion for you. So while the ad is playing, we'll come back to me and I'll show you what the proposed track is. But also, I know the other thing I wanted to show you, spaghetti models. We talk about these all the time. These are models, computer models that are run continuously when a storm pops up. There are so many spaghetti models. This is only a fraction of these computer models that are, input the data, see what happens, see what comes out. The blue line, as I understand it, is the National Hurricane Track, the blue line. Everything else are the other model runs. Now, the consensus, again, seems to be, Galveston Bay, mouth of the Sabine River. But look at some of these outliers. Look at this green. You have a green one way out. You also have one coming out in Corpus Christi. So, I'm not sure that's valid for change. It all depends. What is going to drive this? Let me just see if I can get back to the original piece. I'm not sure why that's not playing, but let me get back to the original 10 o'clock update. But what is driving this is up here is what's left of Marco. It's a low. It's been sitting right here, and it's just kind of slowly moving to the west. That is the magnet for Hurricane Laura now. I always say they seek the path of least resistance, as I understand it and I always preface this by saying I'm not a meteorologist. I'm just a guy who's sat next to them for a long time and have tried to listen and watch and read everything they've been saying this morning. So where that low goes is probably where Laura is going to make landfall. All right. So that, and again, when you say, how is it possible? 130 mile an hour, those are gusts. Those are not sustained winds. That's gust to 100. Does it really matter at 130 miles an hour? I dare say very few people have ever been in 100 mile an hour plus winds. Right? I mean, I have. And it kind of blew my mind. I'm during Rita, I'm out in 50 mile an hour winds. I'm already thinking it's 100. It's kind of hard to fathom how hard 100 miles an hour is. So, all right. So all that said, again, you have mandatory evacuations. Here's the reality. It's time to either get gone or get ready. Two options if you live in Southeast Texas. Get gone or get ready. What does get ready mean? Get ready means that if you can't leave and you're not going to leave, to be smart enough to prep your home for that kind of wind, for those kind of winds. So if you have winds at 100 miles an hour, everything becomes a projectile. Get everything down. I'm talking about hanging plants. I'm talking about chairs, umbrellas. All those things need to come down and be stored away. And again, it's hard to imagine how fast 100 miles an hour is, but you need to be thinking those kind of things. I'm going to take you to a website which I think can help you if you're staying, if you're prepping to stay. Let me also say, if you're staying, be smart enough to find the safest room in your house. Wherever you're staying, you want to find the safest room. What does that mean? That means it's a room without windows, if you can find one. It's a room in the middle of a house. If you can go someplace, if you can, want to evacuate, you still got plenty of time to do that. I think the longer you wait, maybe the more crowded it will be. But at this point, it's not a problem. All right, I want to take you to WikiHow. If you're saying, well, I can't go, I don't know what to do, I'm at wit's end, I'm so anxiety ridden, give me a place to start. This is a great place to start. Go in and read, building a disaster kit, simple things, things you don't think about. Once you have a windstorm, which is what we are talking about, very likely you're going to lose electricity. If you lose power, that means you don't want to have a whole lot of food in the refrigerator, because if you've ever had to dump a refrigerator after a few days, it is not a pleasant task. A lot of people will remember after Rita having to do that. I think this storm may be stronger, but it's very similar to Rita as far as being a windstorm and trees being down, power being out. But look, just a few things that you can think about. Fill up the bathtub with water if you decide to stay. The average bathtub holds enough water for about 3 days. And when the power goes out, or if the water supply goes out and you want to flush the toilet, you're going to be glad you got a bucket of water. And, there's a lot of water in your hot water heater. In fact, most of them about 150 liters. That can be water you can use for a long time if you had to. The average person, a gallon a day, probably less than, but your pets have to be considered. The other thing is, get ready. Go and find yourself some bottled water and put it in the freezer now. Put some water in plastic bags. Put it in the freezer now. Why? Because A, if it's in the freezer, it's going to help the freezer stay cold. Rule of thumb, freezer full of food, if you don't play the peak game, can last, and again, it's just a rule of thumb, but 48 hours. Half a fridge, 24 hours. Put some water bottles in there, and then the power goes off. The water bottles are still cold. It keeps your food longer. All right? Just things you might not think about. Same thing. Put water in a plastic bag. It will keep things longer. And then you put it in the ice chest, later, and now you've got cold water to drink when it starts to thaw out. Have your prescription medications. Have them handy. Get them all together today. Get yourself a disaster kit. Have some flashlights, can opener, first aid kit, soaps, sanitizers. Never a bad idea, if you're going to take supplies with you, to take those supplies. But if you're staying at home, it's a little bit different. I'm not going to run through all of these today, but you can do that. Things that, make sure your insurance is up to date. Maybe you can probably still do that. Secure your windows if you have time. You want to board them up, or you want to make the effort. In the old days, kid growing up in Houston, Carla comes along, you taped your windows. You're just trying to reinforce them to the point that if they break, they don't go everywhere. Also, the suggestion to learn to turn off the gas and power to your home. Why? Water too. Because if you have a leak and you're gone, right? If it's shut off, you're a whole lot better off. Talks about fortifying your home, finding that place, learning. Listen, you bought a generator yesterday. Congratulations. Be smart about using it. We're a long way from that, but we will, I assure you, if this thing stays on its current track, we will be talking about using generators and how to use them and how to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning. All right? That can be a major issue, especially with people who've never run generators before. All of these things, WikiHow. So again, I encourage you, go check it out. It's always good to have all this information. I am, like many, having been a Boy Scout, one of those who believes it is best to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, right? Take care of business, and then you'll be going. I do want to show you this. This can be a valuable website as well. This is called drivetexas.org. It will give you all of the closures across the state of Texas. The evacuation routes really are north from Beaumont, although at this point, because Houston is not evacuating, you're not being discouraged from going I-10. So if you're thinking, I'm going to scoot over to San Antonio and ride this thing out there, you're not being stopped. That's my understanding. All roads are open at this time. Have they opened what they call contraflow, where they open both sides of the interstate to go one direction? No. But they say if need be, they would. I understand evacuation lanes, which are going north, have been activated. And those are usually really shoulder of the road that they use in case of overwhelming amounts of traffic. I have been on the phone with others who have already left, and I have been told that they have not run into any kind of overwhelming situation when it comes to traffic. Especially I've talked to people who've gone 69, 96, 105, 290, I-10, 90. None of them have had any major problems. This is not to say they haven't been, stopped somewhere along the way. Let's read some of the questions coming in this morning. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, but let's read some of them. Shalonda Daniels, what about going through Louisiana? You can. Depends on when you're going to go. It's all going to be about timing. You know what I'm saying? It's all going to be about when are you, if you're one of those people that you're looking at, let's go back to tracking the tropics here and look at the timestamp that they have on this thing. The first box is at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. The second box is 12 hours later at 7 p.m. So at 7 p.m., it's still offshore. And we're talking about probably 1 a.m. landfall. So if you're thinking, I'm going to wait until tomorrow evening to leave, I'm not sure that would be a wise idea. And again, continue to follow this because the path can change, intensity can change. I got to tell you, I love the comment that Mayor Barty made of Port Arthur. You know, he said, I hope that by Thursday, I'm the most hated man in Port Arthur. That everybody's mad at me because I told them they needed to evacuate and nothing happened. He said that would be great. But the worst thing he said that could happen is that we do nothing and everything happens. So, again, but not everyone is going to be able to go. Let's see. Leanne Heckathorn says, drivers on 69 in Woodville are driving on the line, keeping people from driving in the evacuation lane. We just came through and the line is backing up because of it. Okay, so you're going to have to deal with other drivers, and that seems to be a big issue, right? That you want to do that. Somebody asked, what about if I leave at 12 or 1? Again, the later you leave, the greater expectation you should have to encounter some traffic. A lot of people left last night. A lot of people left early this morning, but that's beside the point. You go when you can go. But patience is going to be at a premium, no matter where you go as you go later. Melody Mosley says, this is very helpful and realistic for such a looming event. Thank you. If you can get that storm to head, yeah, believe me, if I had the power, nobody is more interested in this storm going someplace else. I am fatigued like everyone else, I guess. I'm tired of having to deal with this. I'm tired of seeing my neighbors struggle. I'm tired of having to talk about what I feel like it seems like every year. There were years that, 15 years, there was not a storm. In the last 10 years, it seems like every year there's something we've got to deal with, all right? Ashley Leger is asking, will airlines be flying in Houston Wednesday night? Are they flying in from Arizona on Wednesday evening headed to Houston? You know what I always tell people, Ashley, best thing you can do, call the airline. Call directly. Ask them, what's going on? How could this affect me? Can I get, the question may be, can I get to the airport at some point? But again, we're not talking about something that's happening today. And that's what puts so many people off as far as leaving. You look up and you go, well, that's nice. There's not a problem. It looks good to me. Once clear, a little bit warm, but it's not a problem. That's not the issue. The issue is what's going to be happening in 24 hours from now and how many people are going to go out. All right. I think we've hit all the websites that I wanted to hit for you. And again, just that idea that the best thing you can do for yourself is either get out or get ready. And I do want to take some time this morning to talk about this. This is always the question, and nobody can answer this, Barbie. I wish I could. She said, if leaving, will we be allowed back in? How long before we're allowed back home? There's no way to answer that, until afterwards. There's just not. I wish I could tell you, oh yeah, it'll be 12 hours. It all depends on what kind of damage you have. Are the roads blocked? Are trees laying in the road? If you're old enough to remember Rita, you remember that was the situation. Mandatory evacuation. People left. They were not able to come back because of the disarray here in town. There was no power. And because of that, the city was locked down. People were not able to come back in. So if that concerns you, you should take that and figure that into the equation. Again, I say that if you have never been through a Category 3 or a Category 4 storm, prepare yourself. It makes for, and it always seems to be at night, it makes for a very long night. You think the roof's coming off all the time. It's not, but it always seems like and sounds like it is. People are asking, what time. Again, I can't give you a specific time would be best to leave. Someone asked, can I drive towards Bay City? You can. I'm not sure that would be the best course of action because, again, this window of opportunity, when you look at this thing, it can still slide off. It could still slide off to a little bit further to the west. And wouldn't Bay City kind of be on the edge of that already? So, that might be something you want to think about. Which direction is it going after it makes landfall? The upside of this storm, if there is one, is that it's going to be quick moving. I mean, we're talking about makes landfall at 1 a.m. And according to the meteorologists, they already have it up in Little Rock, Arkansas by, 7 p.m. that night. I mean, it's not one of these like a Melda or whatever that's going to hang around. It's gone. All right. I'm going to run out of time. I'm going to run out of battery, so I'm going to sign off here. We'll be back throughout periodically. I thank you for your time. Do me a favor. Hit me with a like if you don't mind. Reach out to your neighbor if you don't do anything else. Learn that we are a community, and in crisis, we have to work together. So if you know somebody that's at their home that they can't go any place, you be the one that makes the difference. You go over there and help them clean up the yard to make their yard as good as they can. You make sure they have canned goods in the house. You show them where a safe room is. It's a simple thing to do. It won't take you long. And I guarantee it will make a huge difference for that person who, again, maybe they're scared. They can't leave. They don't have anybody to leave with. They don't have anywhere to go. They don't have the financial wherewithal. You be the change agent that goes in and says, look, I can help you and we can get through this together. All right. And again, I will be back periodically, certainly back tomorrow. Don't forget, noon will be an update on KFDM 5, 6, 10 tomorrow morning, all morning. We will be going wall to wall beginning tomorrow at noon. That means we will be on 24/7 with all the latest information. So if you're out of town, watch us on Facebook. Catch up on KFDM.com. And I promise I'll do my best to continue doing these. All right. Go out and make it a terrific, safe day. Again, get out or get ready.